This is Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham, my co-host Rod Mullins. We're going to talk some NASCAR. We're off-season news here, but there's a lot here. We might have more in this podcast, Rod, than during the season when we have races to talk about. There's so much off-season news. Let's start at the top here. Kurt Busch confirming he's not returning to Stewart-Haas. I guess this is something that had been maybe talked about for a while, but big news, obviously, in NASCAR with Kurt Busch not returning to Stewart-Haas.
Yeah, he's not coming back to Stewart-Haas, and as we report this, the big news was released, and the picture has now been released and everything through Chip Ganassi Racing that Kurt Busch is going to move over to Chip Ganassi for the 2019 season, and he's also taking Monster Energy drink for sponsorship over, and he'll be driving the Chevrolet Camaro CL1 for next season, and for him, it was a no-brainer. I mean, he had nowhere else to go. Jamie McMurray is moving out at Chip Ganassi Racing. So Kurt Busch, looking to kind of continue his streak of what he's doing, I think he's going to a really good race team at Chip Ganassi. And who knows, the possibility of Kurt Busch racing Indianapolis and Charlotte in the same day again might take place later on if this marriage works out between the two.
So what does this mean for him, too, now? Does his crew come over with him? Does he have a new crew? How does it work in terms of the behind-the-scenes stuff?
Well, there may be some things that happen that he might be able to, if Chip Ganassi and them are able to work things out with Stewart-Haas, they might bring a crew chief over with him. I know that Kurt Busch was very happy with his crew chief from this year of who he had on Stewart-Haas, but generally, some of these teams, they've already got people waiting in the wings ready to step in, and they're professional all along. So I'm kind of betting right now that there'll be some people that'll be stepping up in the Chip Ganassi stable. It'll either be the people that are there right now that were racing with Jamie McMurray on his team. They'll stay there, or they'll move on to other opportunities. But it's one of those things of where this is the silly season, and things start kind of getting more cemented in place by about January and February, and especially before Daytona. Kurt Busch may have just a totally new crew, and he'll take some getting used to get used to some things inside the pit. So we could see a variety of different things, some seasoned professionals in there, or some new people, one way or the other.
So from Kurt Busch, let's now talk some Daniel Suarez. I saw an article where Daniel was talking about hoping to be in a better position to win races next year after a sort of disappointing 2018. Talk some Daniel Suarez for us.
Well, I'm hoping that maybe we'll have something about Daniel Suarez next week, because Daniel Suarez has kind of been hovering here for just a little bit, waiting whether or not he's going to hit the ground with a thud or if he's going to float down like a feather here, because Daniel Suarez is on the unfortunate end of what happens in racing, and that is when you take Martin Truex, you shut down the Furniture Row racing team at the end of the season, and then Joe Gibbs picks him up and puts Martin Truex in one of his Toyotas and leaves Daniel Suarez kind of out in the cold, so to speak. But Daniel Suarez was talking more and more about this, and I think it's now even more certain after he has already left Joe Gibbs Racing that he saw little progress from a rocky start in his rookie season beginning with that team, but they never did develop the consistency they needed. And this is something that you see in a lot of race teams. And I see this in the Roush Fenway camp as well. You've got a couple of top race drivers, contenders up there at the top, and you've got like a Stenhouse over there, and then you had a Mark Martin at one time and some of the others. And they ran consistently up in the front. But then as things start to change, people, whether it's funding or whatever it may be, things start kind of falling off after a while. And Daniel Suarez, I hate to use the term, but he's sort of like the odd kid out, or the redheaded stepchild in this one. You had two great drivers running the circuit, so to speak, and Kyle Busch dominating in the 18 car. Then you had Eric Jones in that second car out of the Joe Gibbs Racing stable. And so poor Daniel Suarez, he's kind of left out of the cold about it. And although he did go out and make some good rides through the 2018 season and did well, he said he didn't feel like they'd improved in the 2 years that he had been there at Joe Gibbs Racing. And in fact, he said he felt worse. And by the end of the first year, he said they were much better than a year later. But he said more than anything else, he said it was time for a change with him. But he said they're going to be in a good NASCAR team. They're going to be in a good Cup team, and they're working on the last few details right now. But hopefully, he said they're going to be able to share something maybe this month, but no later than January.
All right, let's switch gears and talk about the Snowball Derby. That's a historic race, end-of-the-year race that a lot of folks are familiar with. 51st running of the Snowball Derby. It's a super late model showcase. Racers from different backgrounds. A real showcase, especially for the younger racers. Noah Gragson from the Camping World Truck Series gets the win in that race. And talk about Noah Gragson and about this race and the results.
Well, Noah's 20 years old. He's one of the young guns and one of the superstars that have come under the Kyle Busch Motorsports banner, and that's where he's learned to drive a lot of things under Kyle Busch. And I like to call Noah Sharky. I had a chance to meet Noah back about a year and a half ago at one of these Bristol Motor Speedway events where we get a chance to kind of race around with the drivers or talk to them and things like that. And Noah Braxton's a nice kid. I mean, he's got a future in the sport, but he said that more than anything else, this was, we won it. We won the Snowball Derby down in Florida. It's unbelievable. He said he's very thankful. I think the funniest thing that came out of this was not him wearing the shark head that we caught him at one of the races with in one of the Xfinity Series races or the Camping World Series races this year. One of those stuffed Jaws-looking shark heads that he wore in the background as he photobombed one of the other drivers being interviewed on national television. But the thing that was so funny this time around, Noah wanted his kiss from the beauty queen there at the end of the race, and she suddenly turned on him, and he didn't get his kiss there at the end of the race. But eventually, this was the funny thing. Sharky comes away with her telephone number, and he comes away with a kiss after all. So all around, Noah Braxton was really happy about this. But you had some other great drivers in this race as well. French Canadian Raphael Lassard, 17 years old, out of Quebec, Canada. He won down at Bristol when we had the super race down there at Bristol back in about May, first part of June. You also had Chase Elliott, the race that he had here, beginning with Chase Elliott's first Snowball Derby win in 2011. You had winners out of the NASCAR circuit like Aaron Jones. Then you had John Hunter Nemechek, Kristen Eckes. He's also been in there. And don't forget, Kyle Busch has also won at that thing as well. And last but not least, Harrison Burton, of course, out of Virginia, son of retired NASCAR star and NBC commentator Jeff Burton. He held the lead for most of the last 100 laps, but he fell behind on the last restart with 5 laps left and really didn't contend with this. But congratulations going out to Sharky and Noah Braxton on that big win in the Snowball Derby.
Snowball Derby there in Florida. We're both in different parts of Virginia. We got real snow we're looking at out here now. So they're just taunting us by calling that the Snowball Derby. I don't like hearing all that stuff. Let's talk some more news here. NASCAR moving forward with a new sponsorship model. So that we've been talking about the economics of NASCAR and how we're having to rethink some things. So you're talking about this new sponsorship model.
Yeah, and this sounds interesting. I'm not quite up to date on everything that goes with it, but NASCAR is asking somewhere around $20 million for what they're going to have as like a top tier slot. It almost reminds me of one of these projects like when you rebuild a theater or you rebuild some kind of a building or something. You have these top tier spenders that people that really have the money to be able to afford to put into the program, and then you have the other people that would love to be able to spend something, but they want to have a part into it. It's the sponsorship game. But the plan is to move away from one title sponsor in place of a tiered system similar to the one used by the NCAA. So NASCAR is kind of learning some things as they go along here, and the Premier Series would simply be called the NASCAR Cup Series. And they have been pitching big spenders already in the sport. We've had Winston for a long time, and Winston will always be synonymous. And yeah, it was cigarettes, but the tobacco company is the one that really put NASCAR where it was at. Then we jumped to Nextel, then we jumped to Sprint, then of course we jumped down to now what we have with the Monster Series, the Monster Cup Series. It kind of takes away that, that big name sponsorship out of it to where people think, well, that's a mouthful to say. Why don't we just say the NASCAR Cup Series, sponsored by such and such? And if they do that, I think it's a lot better. But the Tier 1 package right now, the way that they're going, will come in at around $20 million. And that includes $15 million worth of assets across the league and tracks, plus a minimum of $5 million media spend. And that template is for brands that are new to the sport. And it could look like slightly different for brands that are already NASCAR partners. It's a new model. It's unique in the sense that it includes all of these assets that have never been packaged with series sponsorship before. Now, it can include title deals for the races, like the top tier partners, TV visible signage. This is a big one here, Chris, because for me, some of these races, when Fox comes to Bristol, so to speak, sometimes they have not promoted it on television as saying it's the Food City 500. They will say it's NASCAR Monster Cup Series racing from Bristol Motor Speedway, and they don't even mention who the sponsor is because, truthfully, here in my neck of the woods, Food City makes a lot of money, but Food City cannot afford the amount of advertising or the price tag that Fox puts on that sponsorship. So that's one of the things that will be able to give some of these sponsors regionally, so to speak, maybe a little bit of an upper hand to being able to get their name and their name brand out on a more national level.
Yeah, you know, I work in marketing too. The other half of our business is a marketing business, and in this day and age, you're always looking for that way to get your word out, and there's so many things people can do now. You don't have to even watch TV on TV at whatever time they tell you to watch TV. You can stream stuff. You can watch it whenever you want. The one thing that's still out there is sports. You're not going to binge watch a NASCAR season like you do a Netflix series. So you want to watch it live. So there's a lot of value still in sports, and NASCAR is getting smarter about taking advantage of that. I like seeing that, and also, you know, the reality too is, you know, the extreme high dollars it takes to have your name attached to the top of a series, like, you know, we had in the past, Winston Cup and that kind of thing. That's probably not realistic because so many marketers are trying to throw their money out in as many different places they can to get that, you know, extra bang for their buck. So this is NASCAR being smart. You know, for fans out there who all we care about is the racing and who wins and, you know, how it all goes down, you still got to pay those bills. I'm glad to see NASCAR's moving in this smart direction.
Yeah, and for me, this kind of brings back the old adage that used to be, if you were first on race day, then, you know, you will sell a car on Monday. That's sort of what it used to remind you of. People in the car dealerships were always happy that if Chevrolet won on Sunday, there'd be some people who was a race fan that would walk in there and say, hey, look, I want to buy that car. I'd like to look at that Camaro or something like that. And it's kind of went away from that. But you also have the other brands that are out there. You know, one time, Kodak, I mean, we're talking the bankrupt Kodak now, but Kodak film used to be the most popular film in the sport of NASCAR because they had sponsorship on our local team that we had down here, Morgan McClure. And they had a long-running deal with them for quite a long time of that sponsorship. And Kodak became synonymous with NASCAR. And then they kind of faded away from that because everything went under the radar, so to speak, for Kodak, and then they had to declare bankruptcy, and they eventually shut down. So, you know, once you have that name attached to that, and you're given that sponsorship, and you're given that attention out there, it changes your whole perspective, whether you're a driver or whether you're the business involved in it.
All right, now let's do some fast laps around the track. Got some brief stories here to go through. NASCAR confident of gaining another manufacturer, so hey, take us into this. This could be big news for NASCAR.
Yeah, we've only got the three right now in Ford, Chevrolet, and Toyota. Dodge left the sport back in 2012, and Dodge is rumored saying that they're going to come back, but we don't know when. There's a lot of just question marks behind that. Some of the people that have been interested right now at this point include Nissan, of all people. Nissan has a sizable presence in the American automobile market. They've been linked to it. But the great news, according to Steve Phelps, the NASCAR president, says that there's a ton of interest in it right now. They've been talking about it in the paddock with a lot of new manufacturers. The great news, they've got Ford, Chevy, and Toyota. They're all interested in having another one, maybe even two, into the sport before it's over with. We won't see something for 2019, but I think this realignment stuff starts about 2020. I think we'll probably see somebody at that point. So that's big. And then also I've got to throw in something else, too, that's one of our other stories that we were talking about. General Motors, even with all the big news coming up about General Motors and saying that they are going to be cutting back jobs, and they are also going to be trying to save $6 billion by such and such year. General Motors came out this week and said that they have no plans to cut the current racing programs that they have in place. That's good for Chevrolet, but they also need to inject a little bit more attention into the Chevrolet racing program, especially in NASCAR, because they really suffered this past year. We'll just have to find out and see if Chevy is going to make that much more of a commitment into their motor racing programs as they have in the past.
Yeah, glad you went into that one too. Yeah, because General Motors has been in the news with their cutbacks in other areas. Let's talk about there's some sad news here. I say it's sad news because you just hate seeing someone that reaches the level of NASCAR driver end up getting caught up in something like this. But Rick Crawford, former NASCAR driver, sentenced to over 10 years in prison, almost 11 years in prison. It was a story we reported on a little while ago, Rob, but update us on this.
Well, what they did, they sentenced Rick Crawford to 130 months in federal prison after his conviction in August on one count of enticing a minor and then, of course, using the computer. He won 5 races competing in the NASCAR Truck Series. They arrested him in February, convicted him. A jury did after a trial, which a prosecutor said he agreed to pay $50 to $75 to have sex with a 12-year-old girl. It's a violation of federal law, of course, enticing a minor for a criminal sexual activity. It's sad that this had to end up for him, for Crawford, and he's 60 years old. He's going to spend several years behind bars and everything. And of course, he'll probably be labeled after this. But the thing is, it's one of those dangers out there about getting on such things as Craigslist, and also that little thing about the dark web that's out there that's enticing for people. And it's sad to have to come to all this, but if you're gonna dip into the cookie jar every now and then, and you're going to do this, think you're going to avoid being caught. Rick Crawford found out no, he's going to actually have to serve the time with it.
Yeah, that's quite a fall from grace there. Another story we reported on a little while ago, and it's now reaching a conclusion. Kurt Busch's ex-girlfriend guilty of fraud and evasion. And we've talked about this one before. This is someone we wouldn't have wanted to mess with necessarily, but update us on this story.
Well, again, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Patricia Driscoll, who was Kurt Busch's former girlfriend, she was the head of the Armed Forces Foundation, the executive director of it. At one time, like I said, former girlfriend, Kurt Busch went and said that they got into a fight in the RV one time down in the infield during weekend race activity. She took his head and put it through the wall of one of the RV there that they were sharing and so forth. Well, after 4 days of jury deliberation and 5 weeks of testimony, Driscoll was found guilty on 2 counts of wire fraud, 1 count of first-degree fraud, and 2 counts of tax evasion. She'll be sentenced in mid-March, and she'll remain free on a personal recognizance until sentencing, and the statutory maximum sentence for her crimes, get this, is 35 years in prison. And Kurt Busch said that he told a lot of people, and there were people for a while that thought Kurt Busch was out of his head talking about this, because he said at one point or another that she was an assassin. She was one of these people that was trained, knew how to get things done, and she tried to kill him, or at least that's the way he put it. But, she was involved in some other little things that was going on. And this FBI IRS investigation began in 2015 after the ESPN Outside the Lines program reported on the questionable practices during her 12 years of the foundation, and also the ties to sports-related entities, including NASCAR and Kurt Busch. And so that's where they got her, and I guess that's another one with her hand in the cookie jar, and she could be spending 35 years in prison for what she's got into.
Yeah, we work, our company, Augusta Free Press, works with a lot of nonprofits who raise money for good causes, and to me, it's one of the bigger crimes against humanity to raise money for a good cause and then actually just put it in your own pocket. That's what she's accused of doing, what she's been convicted of doing. So we can say it now. She's, that's what the finding has been, and boy, that's just. And among all the things to raise money for and then keep it for yourself, for people who have served in the armed forces and given themselves in that way, and you raise money in their name and you keep it for yourself, throw the book at her.
Yep, that's the way I look at it too. But let's hope she doesn't hear this and come after us and put our head through a wall in an RV either.
Oh yeah, I'm saying this with the confidence that she'll be in jail for 30 years or more. Yeah, God forbid. otherwise, yeah, I'm at the top of the list there. Kurt Busch and me. I don't need that. I don't need that at all. Let's wrap up our podcast talking about the most popular driver award that's been awarded, and I'm not sure if we can be surprised by this. I think this is a name that is on a lot of the tip of people's tongues here, but tell us who the most popular driver in 2018 is.
Well, it was Chase Elliott, of course, and Chase Elliott has followed in his father's footsteps and also on the path of Dale Earnhardt Jr. So Hendrick Motorsports essentially keeping the most popular driver award in their stable this time around as Chase Elliott was named the 2018 NASCAR Cup Series most popular driver. You know, Earnhardt Jr. had won this award for 15 consecutive years, even through his retirement the 2017 season. And his 15 is short of the record of 16, which was earned by Chase Elliott's father, Bill. Now, Bill held on to it, like I said, 16 years, and then here came Dale Jr. Dale Jr. held on to it for 15 years out of it. So, you know, it's kind of like a little tradition here. It's almost like kings, and they pass down their reign to another king or something, or someone that comes on after them. But, you know, 23 years old, Chase Elliott, he's pretty much been anointed by Dale Earnhardt Jr. as the likely heir to the throne for this award as a result of this voting from the National Motorsports Press Association. But he's taking it in stride. He's just very thankful to all the people and everything that have rewarded him with this, because there were things that he said this year that he really noticed. It was really recognizable just how fired up people were about wanting him and wanting that team to do good this year. The hats, the T-shirts, the things like that. He said it really hit home with him at the track, live and in person. And he says, you know, we got it back to the right name. He said, I'm a little biased. I'm sorry.
I was trying to look it up real quick because I'm trying to think 15 years from now. You know, so Chase will probably win this for the next 10, 15 years just based on the history of this award, right? So does Dale Jr. I guess Dale Jr. is going to have a kid here that might be racing in a few years. Might that be the next most popular driver? You know, around what, about 2033, 2034 or so?
Yeah, well, we'll have to see if Amy is going to agree to that, because if you've not read or seen any excerpts from the book that Dale Jr. has released concerning the concussions and everything like that, I don't know if Amy will actually turn their daughter over to maybe race in the NASCAR series. It's going to have to change an awful lot in order for her to do that. But I know she's probably, you know, she recognizes that that's what made Dale Jr. as popular as it did. And if the daughter has any kind of inkling to want to go and race, I'm sure they'll entertain it, but they'll make sure that she's going to be safe out of it before it's over.
There's got to be some part of that Earnhardt DNA in there that wants to hit the floor with the foot. So that might be hard to suppress as that young lady who was born just April 30th of this year. As she gets older, so that'll be fun to see. But yeah, Chase Elliott is the most popular driver, and that's well, Rod. This has been, you know, we talk about, you know, during the year we preview the races, we review the races, and everything else. This is a meaty, news-packed podcast here on this one. So thank you for taking us through all this news.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for having me.